Welcome back to the Minty Mobile Games Podcast. I am your host, Mint City. I am here yet again with another episode. I've lost count at this point, but I am excited to share and announce that the aficionado of indie gaming, your friend Jacob, is here yet again. I'm really excited to have him. Welcome back, Jacob.
Thank you. And the people have spoken, and we got to give the people what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Jacob was super nice and willing to do this podcast super late notice or last minute, so to speak. I basically just hit him up. We were actually planning to game off stream, off YouTube, as we normally do. And I was like, do you just want to record a podcast right now? And we flung together the notes of this podcast within probably 30 minutes and we're good to go. So thanks again, Jacob.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
But as Jacob kind of touched on, you guys have been wanting another Minty Mobile Games podcast. That makes me super happy because it's always been one of my favorite offshoots that I do on this channel. So don't forget to leave a like, pop a sub, and comment down below on this episode specifically so I know you guys are enjoying it still. I would really appreciate it. And we have quite a few things we're going to be talking about. We're going to be, just to give you guys a little preface, we are going to be talking about mobile games that we're currently playing and looking forward to, as well as indie games we're currently playing and games that we're looking forward to, and a little bit of miscellaneous stuff at the end of this podcast. So if any of that sounds good to you, definitely stick around for that or skip to the parts that you're looking forward to. And we can get straight into it. Without further ado, Jacob, what are you playing on your phone as of late?
So on my phone, as of late, it's not going to surprise anybody at all because it is none other than Vampire Survivors. I mean, what has there left to be said that hasn't been said already about this incredible game? And what a flawless port. It's so fun. So much of your time just disappears playing Vampire Survivors. And I highly recommend it to everyone who hasn't checked it out yet, unless you value your time. And then maybe I don't, because you will probably fall in productivity when you start playing Vampire Survivors. My only slight criticism is that I'm kind of curious as to what's going to happen with the DLC situation, because there's DLC on PC and it's a bit more updated on PC. Things seem maybe a bit in limbo on mobile, and that's pretty concerning because I've actually almost entirely put away Vampire Survivors on PC and Steam Deck, and I've been playing it exclusively on mobile. So, like, if the developers of the game, Ponkel, will put the DLC on there for pay, I would gladly shell out a few bucks to support them and get the DLC. So hopefully they can, figure that situation out, because I think they did such a good job establishing parity for that port. I really hope that they can continue that moving forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the DLC because, as you said, they did a phenomenal job. And I'm hoping that they take the route of Dead Cells, where whenever the game gets a DLC on other platforms, it just comes to mobile maybe a couple months later, a couple weeks later. It's just a little bit behind. I'm fine with that. As long as we get the DLC, and as you mentioned, please just put a price tag on it. You'll be shocked at how many people play it. You've already given us so much for free on mobile as is. I'm sure people are already addicted and willing to pay in a mobile game that they normally wouldn't, if that makes sense.
So, 100%.
Yeah. Well, that's a fantastic start. I am currently playing through Dungreed, so this kind of feels like a mixture. I did a short on it on this channel already, but I haven't covered it in depth. It feels like Soul Knight, if you guys have ever played Soul Knight, or Soul Knight's basically kind of the mobile equivalent of Enter the Gungeon. It feels like that, but mixed with Rogue Legacy in a 2D kind of Metroidvania style environment. And there's all kinds of wacky stuff that you can do, lots of different progression items, and the weapons are super fun, and it's fast-paced. Love the pixel art. It has a lot of personality and charm to it, and I think it feels right at home on mobile. The touchscreen controls are super well done, and it does have controller support as well, which is fantastic. And this is a pretty new release. I think it released within the past 2 weeks, but I had never heard of this game until it came to mobile and downloaded it day one. And I'm really impressed. And it's already one of my favorite games to be playing right now, for sure.
Yeah, I love the art style of Dungreed, and I also what I love even more is the increasing crop of mobile ports of 2D sort of side-scrolling roguelikes and action platformer games. So like Scorchbringer being one of them
Hmm.
previously, that was super cool to see ported to mobile. And with Dungreed on mobile as well, like I think Dead Cells has kind of paved the way a little bit for that to happen
Oh,
more
for sure.
often because there
Hmm.
were games before Dead Cells, but I think that when other indie devs have seen the success of how well Dead Cells has done on mobile and how it has not affected the sales of that game on the other platforms, I think more indie devs who don't have experience with mobile are seeing mobile as more of a viable platform to port on, and that's just a benefit for everybody.
Oh, 100%. I love that you said that because this year has been absolutely insane in terms of mobile releases. Like the amount of great games that have already come out already surpassed pretty much any previous year that I've seen. Like the consistency and quality of these ports uh has completely blown me away. So it is very exciting and I do agree with you. Dead Cells paved the way cuz that's like a very control intensive game and I feel like they kind of nailed the customization and how it feels on a touchscreen. And if Dead Cells can do it, pretty much any other game can. Yeah.
Absolutely. The transition from those games to controller to touchscreen has been really cool to see because like I'm not normally a touchscreen user. Like I will hook up
Mhm.
my controller to my phone to play mobile games that way, with the exception of games like Vampire Survivors, which was very easy to sort of translate to touchscreen. But I think the more we see implementations that are done so well, like Dead Cells, we're going to see that happen just across mobile gaming. We'll see more games that have thrived on PC and console because Dungreed, from my understanding, has reviewed very, very well, at least on PC. And so having those games come over with good touchscreen implementation is only going to help devs moving forward. They're going to see how it's done and how it should be done properly. And then they're not going to be as confused with how to implement it moving forward. Because I know in your vast knowledge of mobile gaming, you've seen some weird touchscreen implementations in the past, right?
Oh yeah, and not all of them were great, that's for sure.
Yep.
So other than Vampire Survivors, is there anything else you're checking out? And if it's only Vampire Survivors, I completely understand.
Yeah, so it's mostly Vampire Survivors, but time for a bit of an older selection. I've been playing Super One More Jump, which I've been a big fan of. And for those who are not familiar with Super One More Jump, it is essentially a one button platformer. You're constantly moving, you're basically pressing the touchscreen to jump, and that's it. But the platforming feels very puzzle like in terms of you need to precisely follow along each level in a way that feels like a puzzle. You have to have a puzzler's mindset when playing Super One More Jump. There are collectibles, both required and optional, and there are a ton of levels. Like, this game is so vast with the amount of levels it has, and you also have collectible palettes and basically skins for the game where you can make your game look vastly different based on what palette and what style you go for. And I thought that that was a nice touch as well. And the interesting thing about this developer is SMG Studio. Now, SMG Studio has developed a bunch of indie games. Most recently, I believe, Moving Out, and they're working on rather Moving Out 2. And they also did a bunch of other games. They work on Risk. So the Risk, I believe it's PC, but it might be mobile as well.
A board
Um,
game?
yeah, well,
What?
there's a PC or digital implementation of Risk. So
That's crazy. I did not know.
yeah, so it's like a basically like a digital board game, and
Mhm.
SMG Studio is working on that. And they also worked on a game called Death Squared. And Death Squared is on mobile. I believe iOS and Android, but I would need to confirm that. And if you haven't played Death Squared and you have a phone, a console, a PC, it is a must play for puzzle game fans and for a game that if you're looking to do something in 2-player or 4-player, Death Squared is incredible. It's a puzzle game, obviously, but it is so fun to play. And in co-op, you're really needing to work together to get through these puzzles because there's a ton of hazards that are in your way to complete each level. And the vibe of the game kind of has a little bit of that Portal influence, although the gameplay style is not, it's not first person, it's top down, but the overall vibe of the game, there's even a narrator in Death Squared that kind of has some of that Portal sort of humor and sass to it that I really enjoy. So Super One More Jump, I definitely recommend for people who like runner games or one button platformers, and Death Squared, if you haven't played it, please play it.
I've got to echo everything you said about Super One More Jump. I do think as a one-touch platformer, I have not seen a more fleshed out uh, one-touch platformer ever. It's never been topped for me. The closest I've seen is Jump Jerboa, um, but it's phenomenal. And it is important to note that Death Squared, I did not realize this. This is pretty old. It's been on the App Store for quite a while, and it is on iOS as well. So if you guys are interested in that, you can check that out. But man, you say I'm the mobile games guy. You just brought that on my radar. It only has 20 reviews. So that's crazy.
Oh,
Um
yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And if you want to play it in co-op, I'm absolutely down to do that.
oh, 100%. And what's cool is it sounds like the co-op on the mobile at least is with one device. So you don't need two copies, which is cool.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, that's really clever. The last game that I'm currently playing on mobile, and I would expect a review from you guys. The thumbnail is created, so here's a little sneak peek for those of you who are listening. Forward Escape the Fold. Now, this is a roguelike dungeon crawler, but with cards. So the way I would describe the gameplay is you start at the bottom of the screen, and this has your character, and your character usually has some sort of an ability that they can cast that will help you in combat or on the board itself. And then there's cards spread out in pathways going to the top of the screen, and you get to choose. You kind of just pick up your card and drag it to whatever the next card you want to do, but then that'll limit your choices going onward. So there's just basically different pathways you can send your character down. And it sounds like this has been done before, but this feels so satisfying to play on mobile. It feels like it was made for mobile. Um, it actually was on other platforms, including Steam before this, apparently. And it is incredibly addicting. There's multiple characters that you can unlock, multiple abilities that you can mix and match with those character classes, and tons of different enemies, bosses, items to encounter and see on subsequent playthroughs. I've been blown away with the amount of content and how addicting this game is. Yeah, expect a review on it soon. But as far as that's all the mobile games that we're currently playing. Jacob, are there any that you're looking forward to releasing on mobile?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you have mentioned a few upcoming mobile games on your channel, but I also wanted to maybe divert the conversation a little bit to a couple of games that were supposed to come to mobile and then now are no longer coming to mobile. So I think
Yes,
the
sir.
the big one is Battlefield Mobile, RIP.
Yeah.
Uh, we're in a situation news wise where we're getting a lot of multiplayer games canceled,
Yep.
and we have Apex Mobile was just shelved or it's about to be, but it was
I saw
announced that
that
it's going
coming,
to be.
to
And
be honest. Yep.
yeah, I mean RIP though, like that.
Yeah.
I played it, you played it. It I had higher hopes for it, and I'm a little surprised it was this fast. But
Yep.
Battlefield didn't even come out, and that was pretty far along in development from my understanding. And
Mm-hmm.
it goes beyond mobile with just Apex in general. Apex, they were working on a single player game in the Apex/Titanfall universe, which to me means the unofficial Titanfall 3. And that's not going to happen anymore. And then
That's
even
what I was really sad about, to be honest.
Oh, me too. And even Apex proper has had lower than projected financial success as of late, and still a massive game. A ton of people play it. I play it. You play it.
Yep.
It's still huge, but seeing some of these games getting shelved before they even come out or canceled so quickly is quite disappointing. But to turn the negative into a positive, I think Valorant Mobile's still coming, so that should be pretty cool because if nothing else, I want to see how they translate that to touchscreen and potentially gyro. I think that could be a really, really fun way to play that game.
Oh yeah, I agree. And I know it's off channel and off podcast we've talked about gyro. You are very experienced with it, and I know that it is definitely the superior control scheme when it comes to controller as well as mobile. It's insane. And I think, like you said, it would be especially good with those controls in such a shooter as Valorant, where precise aim is king. That's what it always comes down to. And I'm excited for Valorant too, because there's a game called Critical Ops, and it had a pretty flourishing esports scene for a number of years, which is basically a ripoff of Counter-Strike, but the mobile version, and they did a really good job with it. And the community was just super dedicated to this game, and I think Valorant will be the new and modern take of that, and I could see it being huge. And I think Riot's proved that they can at least I don't know who's handling the Valorant port to mobile or whatever, or the mobile version of Valorant, but I know that I really enjoyed Wild Rift while I was playing it for the first 2 years. It sounds like they're not handling the esports side of things very well, but it was a fantastic game. So I am also excited for Valorant. I think mobile just deserves a really good shooter outside of COD Mobile. COD Mobile is the only thing that has remained after all of this time for good reason, but I think it would be nice to have another option for sure. And then
100%.
yeah, and then I know that me and you are both looking forward to Mist, correct?
Yeah, Myst is getting a remastered version coming to iOS. That news kind of surprised me. That is an absolute classic. I mean, I don't have a ton of experience with that game, but it is a game that I do remember as a child because my grandmother at the time, she had a PC in the basement and my cousin had a copy of Myst. So way back when in the very early 90s, I do remember seeing some footage of that game, and I think based on its pacing, it seems to be a perfect fit for mobile, and just the level of mystery and mystique around that game in terms of its writing and how it plays and stuff like that. I think it could do really well on mobile. We've seen other games in, for example, the walking sim genre that have done well on mobile, like Dear Esther, for example. I believe sold pretty well on mobile, and that's a genre that I think is a bit underrated as far as mobile goes because one, it would translate very well to portrait, but
Mhm.
two, on a tablet specifically, I think that genre would be really great. I mean, imagine if Firewatch ever released on mobile. I think
Oh,
it'd be great for that.
it would. What a dream! What a dream! One can only.
Someone contact Valve because they own that studio now.
Yeah. At least you can play it on your Steam Deck, Jacob.
That's right.
um, Another one that I think me and Jacob are both looking forward to, and he can kind of take it away because he has some experience with this one specifically, is Brotato is coming to mobile. And from what I can tell, it's kind of in the Vampire Survivors kind of genre, but it actually does set itself apart a little bit. Could you talk a little bit about that and say what makes it so good?
Yeah, let's talk about Brotato and share some Brotato bona fides here. So it's you are right that it's in that auto battling action roguelike akin to Vampire Survivors genre that we see more and more and more games coming out seemingly every single week. And Brotato separates itself from Vampire Survivors in a few ways. Number one, the amount of characters in Brotato, super vast. I mean, dozens of characters we're talking here. And to backtrack a little bit, this game has more of a, I would like to say, a Flash meets Binding of Isaac kind of art style. It's not as like gross and gory as Isaac in terms of its themes or anything like that. It just kind of has some of that sort of cartoony art style that you might at least tangentially associate with
You
the Binding
described
of
that
Isaac.
perfect, in my opinion. Like, it has
Yeah.
that Flash game hand-drawn art style that you see in The Binding of Isaac minus the gore. That's what I've seen,
Yep.
at least from a first glance.
Yeah, and so basically you start out, you pick a character, and each character has a different set of stats or buffs based on the kinds of weapons you use. And there's a billion stats in terms of like speed and armor and attack and melee attack, ranged attack, elemental damage, obviously HP, and different stats that you can increase or decrease throughout the game. So you'll go into a level. All the arenas look the exact same, with the exception of a couple of characters who might have a slightly larger arena size or a slightly smaller one. And you are being barraged with enemies through several rounds. There's 20 rounds total in a run, and runs typically, each run increases in time, or each level of the run lasts a longer amount of time as you go. And you're basically trying to defeat as many enemies as you can and collect these sort of green gems, which work as your currency for purchasing different weapons, upgrading your weapons, and different stat modifier items that are basically kind of represented like cards. Um, and there's so many different weapons. So again, you have short range stuff like a fist is a weapon or a stick is a weapon, and they have really cool modifiers to them. So, for example, let's say you get a stick as a weapon. The stick can actually be very valuable because the more sticks you have, it multiplies the amount of damage each stick that you have does. So
What? That's
yeah,
awesome.
so that's the strategy within Brotato. For example, the weapons that I really like starting out with are weapons that, for example, there's a axe that at the starting level, every 20 enemies you kill, it increases your damage by 1. And there's also a scepter version of that that every 20 enemies you kill, it grants you 1 additional HP.
Okay.
And those weapons feel very valuable to start out with because they're basically just free stat boosters to start out. And each weapon has a different class. And so the amount of weapons that you have in a particular class will give you a buff and a nerf to your stats. There's like a lot of just meta level stats that you have to keep track of. So, for example, if you have all of these different weapons that modify based on the amount of enemies that you kill, that will increase, I believe, your dodge, but decrease your armor.
Okay.
And so you have to like really think about the amount of weapons and stuff like that that you can hold. And the characters have a lot of variety to them. Like there's even a character that you are the weapon. So you can't add weapons. You're just basically a wrecking
A
ball.
deadly potato, a hot
Yes,
potato.
exactly. There's also enemies that can only carry, or not enemies, characters that can only carry a certain kind of weapon. So that kind of gives you that replayability. And once you complete a run, you can unlock, you get an unlock for different items or weapons. but you also unlock higher difficulties, which introduce more difficult weapons, maybe mini bosses and stuff like that. And there's just so much game in here that it's an incredible value. It's very, very cheap on PC right now, and I'm sure it will be when it comes to mobile as well. I believe it might also be free coming to mobile, but don't quote me on that. But it would make sense considering almost every game in that space is free to play. So um, definitely be on the lookout for Brotato. I have not played the game in mobile, but there is a playtest that select creators are playing. I'll just say that. And I believe that it could translate very, very well to mobile.
And I'm sure you guys will be finding out very, very soon. Is
That's right.
what we'll leave you with on that. Thank you for that. Well, I feel like I know it inside and out already now. So that's perfect. And then last but certainly not least, at least for me that I'm looking forward to on mobile, is Everdale. Now, Everdale was actually being created by Supercell from my understanding, and I'm always interested in what Supercell's doing. They've proved time and time again that they can have lightning in a bottle multiple times and they collect them like a six pack. And so Everdale is a cooperative city builder. So there's no PvP whatsoever. It's just cooperative. And it looked like really relaxing, a great art style. And I've kind of been following it like loosely. And I guess they kind of stopped production on it. And I think it was soft released in a few countries. And the reception was pretty positive, and some of it was mixed, but none of it was really negative. And I guess they dropped the making of it, and then another company bought it, and I think it's like one of the biggest merging games. Like they make one of the biggest merging games on mobile or something. I don't remember, but it's apparently going to fully release still because they bought it off of Supercell, and it's a huge company that's proven that they'll keep a game alive for years at a time. So hopefully, I can at least get my hands on it and try it for myself. But sometimes just a peaceful city builder really hits the spot. So looking forward to that one.
Gotta love a good city builder. The more that we can get on mobile and otherwise, the better. I mean, it's like Townscaper coming to
Hmm.
mobile recently. That was really good. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's going to be so many more coming out. Especially I've been looking on upcoming city builder games, and I think fans of the genre are going to be eating pretty good this year.
Amen to that. And it works so well on touchscreen. It's like card games on mobile. I feel like it just feels right with a city builder and management. It just plays so well.
As the unofficial number one slice and dice fan, I agree.
And there is the plug of slice and dice. It's just a tradition at this point that it
Yeah,
has to happen.
everybody take your drink if you were predicting that.
And now on to the games that we are currently playing, and we're kind of focusing on indie games for this section. And I think Jacob, I'll have you start, but me and Jacob have been playing one of the games that he suggested to me together. And what is that game?
It is none other than RoboQuest. If you haven't heard of RoboQuest, I mean,
Oh,
please, please play that. I am imploring everybody that is listening to this podcast right now. If you have not played RoboQuest and you have an Xbox or a PC, you need to play this. It is a roguelite FPS. If you're familiar with games like Gunfire Reborn, then that's kind of in that wheelhouse. But the differences are palpable and fairly significant the more that you play because RoboQuest is very platforming heavy. If I could come up with a number of games that would precede it, that if you smash them together created RoboQuest, I'm going to try and do a decent example here. So let's say you take a little bit of that Borderlands kind of art style, you mix in a little bit of that Overwatch kind of weaponry and ability system,
mm-hmm,
throw in a little Quake in the mix,
mm-hmm.
and then right at the end, just a little sprinkle of Jet Set Radio, and you have RoboQuest. Like
Sheer poetry, Jacob.
it it's just so good. And it is a two-person co-op game, optional, of course. You can play it single player, but it has online co-op and cross-play. And it's
Mhm.
really interesting because it's still in early access, but it is also on console. You don't see that very often. Um,
Yeah, especially well on Games Pass too. So it is on Games Pass. That's how I'm primarily playing it. Jacob was like, "Hey, this game's supposedly coming out on Games Pass now. We have to check this out." And as Jacob said, it is phenomenal. It has completely blown me away. And I think one of the main things that sets it apart from Gunfire Reborn, because there's not really other roguelike um shooters with looting elements and abilities other than Gunfire Reborn to compare this to. But I think the weapon variety in this one especially seems like it's already more than Gunfire Reborn and it's in early access, which it's always fun popping open a loot crate and seeing what weapons you have. Jacob is a throwing knife master.
oh yeah, I love the throwing knives. I mean, the like you said, the weapon variety is incredible with this game. I don't know if many games match it. I mean, every single time we play, we're seeing something new in terms of the weapons,
Yep.
and that's such a good feeling. Like, and there are tons of different magic kind of weapons. So you can get weapons with cryo, which freezes enemies. You can get weapons with shock, which feels really fun. Burning, things like that. Weapons also have crits. Some don't, but many of them do.
And alternate
And
fire modes as well, which is interesting.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
like you have weapons like the mine gun, where you can basically shoot out mines, kind of TF2 style. It reminds me of the Demo Man from TF2, if anyone's familiar with that, where you can stick enemies with mines and then use your alt fire to detonate them, and that can do some pretty good damage. And I think we can both vouch for this. This game might have one of the most satisfying snipers I think I've ever used.
100%. I could not believe it. So there's this like really beefy, like Kraber looking, like 50 cal sniper that you can get. And as Jacob mentioned, this is the most satisfying. I'd wager to say it is the most satisfying sniper I've ever used in any game. And a lot of the weaponry in this game kind of alludes to other weaponry in other games. Like there's a gun that really reminds me of the plasma pistol from Halo, and there's a revolver that reminds me of, I forgot what they renamed him to, but McCree's gun from Overwatch. And it's just so well done. The fact that you have crossplay and it's been seamless. We haven't had any issues whatsoever. Um, it's been a blast. And I think the platformers that we are, the platform lovers that we are, there's a lot of platforming in this. There's a lot of first person platforming and kind of like small collectibles here and there that encourage you to explore. And there's a lot of verticality too, which really mixes up the combat itself for me at least. And that's been what I've really enjoyed too.
Yeah, I can definitely echo those sentiments. The platforming feels really, really fun. You have these rails you can grind on, and like every game that has rails you can grind on is just an infinitely better game. And there are plenty of those in RoboQuest. And the platforming is rewarding because you can get these little like collectibles that give you additional currency and also help with the meta progression. And that's another thing that I love about RoboQuest is the meta progression. That you start off in a hub world, which is a really fun little hub world to explore, and then you can go up to what is essentially like it almost looks like a food stand, and you can trade in the currency that you've earned from going through runs for meta progression. And this meta progression can include additional weapon choices and more heals available and things like that. And so it's going to make it a little bit easier as you play because this game is not easy. It is pretty difficult, and we're playing on the medium difficulty, I believe.
Forgot
So
about that. Yeah.
there are multiple difficulty modes, but the bosses absolutely slap you if you're not paying attention or if you don't know the pattern. And there is a revive system if you're playing in co-op, but the trade-off you have to make is when you revive, your teammate gets half your health. So you have to really manage your health twofold You have to
Mhm.
manage it for yourself, but you also have to manage it in case you need to revive, which we both have had to revive each other during runs.
Jacob,
And
you're too kind. I was about to say this is just something that Jacob has to worry about because he has carried me through this game. I'm always getting downed. I can definitely dish the damage, but I am also taking it just as much. So
I mean,
Jacob's been carrying me.
I have gotten smacked around a bit in this game as well. And the thing about the health is, so as you defeat enemies, they drop health, but it's for a limited time. So the game really does encourage you to kind of go aggro. And if you have the right loadout of weapons, so satisfying and so fun. Like, I remember we were doing some strategies where you were going for the snipes, and I
Mhm.
was just running in like just
With a
it felt
cryo
like,
canyon or something, yeah.
yeah, I had like a cryo cannon, and I was just running in like it was 300 or whatever. Like, I
You
just
were
no
playing Doom.
regard. Yeah,
Yeah.
no regard for my own life, just going straight into enemies. And it was working because the other underrated thing on the basis of platforming is you can jump on enemies to damage or kill them. So like you can pull off really, really cool combos and movesets. There's sliding and there's side sliding, which you found out that I didn't
Mhm.
even know existed. So if you're familiar with the movement and things like Apex, you're not going to be that far off from playing RoboQuest. And right now, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I can't say anything negative about it outside of just release it on everything. But I'm sure they're going to look for to do that when it reaches 1.0. And it's just so fun. And I mean, honestly, like, after this podcast is over, we should squad up and do that again.
Yeah. Yeah, I am definitely addicted and consider that a guarantee. Yeah, it's worth we'll end with this. It is worth a Games Pass subscription just to play that game. And we'll
Yes.
leave it at that. And then is there anything outside of RoboQuest that you're playing, Jacob?
Oh yeah, a bunch of stuff. So I just finished Pizza Tower today, and if you're not familiar with Pizza Tower, it feels like a spiritual successor to the Wario Land series, which is a good thing because Nintendo seems to
Not care
not be
about it.
interested. Yeah,
Yeah.
not very interested in making a new Wario Land. The last Wario Land we had, if you're not familiar, was Wario Land Shake It, which released on the Wii, I think in like 2009 or something like that. It was a long time ago. Waggle controls were all the rage when that came out. So that should put it into perspective. And there are two spiritual successors to Wario Land, and one of them is Pizza Tower. The other one is Anton Blast. Pizza Tower released in January, and it has already sold a ridiculous amount on PC. Like, it has started to fly in terms of its sales, and for good reason. It feels very Wario Land like, except with the speed amped up to like 11. Like, you are flying through levels, just barreling through enemies left and right. And there are collectibles, there are secrets, which is great. But the nice thing about this game, which you may be familiar with while playing games like Wario Land, is once you've reached the end of the level, you then have to speed run your way all the way back to the beginning. And you don't get a lot of time to do that, but it really puts your platforming skills to the test, which I like. And you can actually replay those levels, and then you have to speed run it twice. So there is a lot of incentive on going really, really fast. It's like if Wario Land had a little bit of Sonic injected in there. And the art style, I
It's
don't know if
awesome.
it's,
I love it.
yeah, I don't know if it's something that many people are going to be that familiar with. Like, you're going to look
Yeah.
at it and be like, what is this? But if you are old like me and you're familiar with earlier, like Nickelodeon kind of cartoons, like,
That is the perfect way to describe
mhm.
it. Yeah.
So like
Ed, Ed, and
Rocco's
Eddie,
Modern
maybe?
Ed, Ed, and Eddie for sure, and
Yeah.
Rocco's Modern Life comes to mind when thinking
Mhm.
of this. Ren and Stimpy a little bit too. So those are the kinds of I feel like they're a bit of influence, and also like older Adult Swim cartoons,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, like stuff like that, where the art style is crude but like charming. So and super vibrant. The music is incredible. I love the music in Pizza Tower, and The levels themselves are not particularly difficult, but the bosses definitely are. So be on the lookout for some difficult bosses with multiple phases, and just have a good time. I think I finished the game in around 4 hours, I believe. And even though it is not Steam Deck verified, I played the entirety of it on Steam Deck and I had no issues. So um, definitely check that one out. I think it's 19.99 on PC right now. But based on its success, I'm pretty sure it's going to release on consoles, at minimum the Switch, in due time. And I don't really have many negative things to say about it. It's really, really good. And you and I have also been playing a little bit of Core Keeper, so I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Oh, for sure. Yes. So this is another one that me and Jacob have been playing together along with his partner. And this is a really cool, the way I describe it is an over the top view Terraria. And that's literally all you need to know. So if you're familiar with Terraria, that's a crafting game slash like mining game. And so in Core Keeper, they literally plop you in this area and you just have to dig away at walls. You have to craft craft certain tools to quicken the process, and you dig through all kinds of different materials, and you slowly build up your own little town slash city in here. And there's various bosses that you can encounter and try to defeat. There's all kinds of cool little discoveries that you can make. Like we were and found a I found a like go-kart track. It was the weirdest thing ever. It's like an old rustic go-kart track, and there's like kind of this like overarching like storyline that's told without words. So there's like remnants of these past civilizations and stuff. And it's just fun to discover, and it's completely cooperative. We've been playing with 3 people, and it's been really fun. You feel that like slow but steady sense of progression, and you can get really like lost in it. Like I remember we were playing for like 2 hours, and it felt like 30 minutes, and you just get really engrossed in the tasks that you're doing. Like you'll be mining for a bit and you're like, I'm kind of getting bored. I'm going to go plant a garden, or I'm going to go build a house so that NPCs can move in. And it's just what you make of it, but it has just enough guidance or objectives for me personally, because I have a hard time with these type of games where if it just plops me and doesn't give me any goal, no sense of direction whatsoever, then it's hard for me to stay entertained unless I'm playing with others. But this one, just like Terraria, has those bosses to try to defeat. You can build things to allow NPCs to come that will bring you more gear and open up new avenues of crafting and stuff like that. So it has really hit the spot for me, to be honest.
Oh, 100%. I definitely agree with the Terraria comparisons. It's basically, like you said, top-down Terraria with a little bit of Stardew thrown in there.
Yes, very true.
But the lighting and pixel art is incredible. There is just so much beauty to this game's world and the different biomes that are offered. The water looks really good. Everything looks so good. Sound design is amazing too. And like you said, there's always something to do. Whenever you feel like not doing something, you can just pivot and do something else, and the game doesn't wall you away from
Hmm.
doing a whole lot. Like you can plant a garden, you can fortify your base, you can build homes like you said, and the houses that you build were very, very good. Then you have a future in the core keeper real estate market.
Oh my
And
gosh.
meanwhile, mine look like sad dungeons. But the mining is really satisfying. There's fishing, there's fighting, like combat. And, like, for example, the most random stuff can happen, like you said, with the kart racing track, but also my partner found a musket,
Oh
I think,
yeah, yeah,
and
yep.
then gave you the musket, and then you single-handedly destroyed a boss with 0 issues whatsoever, while my partner and I were doing something completely different. Like, that was amazing.
That
And
was a
so
fun time. Wow.
there's all these little things that just happen along the way, and it really does eat away at time in a really, really awesome way. The time just melts away when you play it, and they're updating it quite a bit. Like there's a recent, I think, Valentine's Day update coming or something like that, and different seasonal stuff. Also, the map is massive. Like we've been playing for hours, and I feel like we've barely discovered anything.
That is very true. Like I don't know how. I wonder if it's endless. Like I'm legitimately debating on whether it's endless or not because
Mhm.
it just seems like the different biomes that we encounter. There's sand. There's these weird stone civilizations. There's like caverns. There's grassy areas. I don't know. I don't think we're ever gonna reach an edge, to be honest, on the map, which is really cool. And it's just fun, like unlocking new ways to traverse too. Like we were using those go-karts that we found to quicken
Yeah,
the travels because we've mined so large that our home base is so far away. It's just I highly suggest this one for those of you who need a good game to just hop on with your friends. And if your friends play without you, it doesn't matter because it's a shared biome and they can just give you whatever items they find and discover, and you're right caught back up to speed. It's a fantastic little co-op game. A really good find.
absolutely, and also highly recommend it in co-op, like you said. So, one person has the biome, and you can
Mhm.
pretty much just kind of play it with whenever with a code. And the last point that I'll make about Core Keeper is it strikes a really good balance between feeling somewhat mysterious and barren, but also feeling incredibly lived in. Like you and I went to a completely different biome, and there's this giant like sandworm type thing, just like
Yeah.
absolutely wrecking everything, and we're like, "Whoa, what is that?" And so things just totally take you by surprise as you explore. It is one of the most fulfilling exploration games I've played in a while, and highly recommend that one.
Oh, without a doubt. And another one that I'm playing right now, and it's already within, I would say it's guaranteed in my top 10 indie games of all time for me. Um, Inscription. Now I've put this one off for way too long. I have it on PS5, and as soon as it came out on PS5, I knew I was going to get it. I bought it when it was slightly on sale, and I knew it would be right up my alley. It's a card battler, but outside of the card battling, there's roguelike choices where you can choose different pathways to take your character down, and those situations can give you more cards or upgrades or different scenarios that you have to make decisions in. But then there's an overarching storyline where you're basically in a hostage situation. I'm not giving anything away, it's not spoiling anything. You discover this super early on. You're in basically a hostage situation in this cabin, locked away with this really creepy person that you can't really see, and they're making you play this board game slash card game with them. And you can get up from the table at any time while you're playing this board game or card game. They kind of tread the line where you're like, this person may just be crazy and not evil because they're like, oh, I'm not messed up. You can get up and stop playing anytime. You can stretch your legs, explore the cabin, whatever. And so there's like various puzzle elements and bits and pieces of the story that you can put together in between these games. And it's just such an interesting experience. The art style, the sound design, the vibe, the ambiance of this game is just incredibly engrossing and well done. The first time I sat down, um, my wife was doing a puzzle in the background, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit down and finally play this game. Played it for like 2.5 hours straight, which is rare for me. I usually can only play single player games for like an hour, but this one just swallowed me up. Already in my top 10, an incredible must buy if you enjoy card games or roguelike games. But there's also continuous progression too. It's not completely a roguelike. Like every time that you lose at the game, you start. I don't want to ruin anything. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's an amazing game.
Definitely great suggestion. And also that developer worked on a couple of games, Pony Island and The Hex, which are both very, very highly reviewed as well.
That's good to know. Um, Now the last one of the last things in terms of gaming, if we have any extra time, we are going to be chatting about some other stuff, which I think we'll have a little bit of extra time left. Are there any games that you're looking forward to in the near future, Jacob?
Absolutely. My list is very endless, so I'll try to keep it pretty short. The first game that I'm really, really looking forward to is a game called The Plucky Squire. It is published by Devolver. It is a 3D slash 2D platformer, which I always love both those genres. And I do love when those genres are combined. For example, when it happens in Mario Odyssey. And it's basically like this storybook kind of presentation. And you're going from your storybook, which is 2D, so like 2D platforming, and emerging outside of that book in order to continue the story. And at that point, everything is 3D. The visuals look amazing, the platforming looks really good. And I just think that in general, in terms of publishing, Devolver is going to have a very, very fruitful 2023 with games like The Plucky Squire and Gunbrella and Pepper Grinder and games like that. Terra Nil, I definitely should mention as well as a sort of regenerative story or regenerative city builder. That game looks really, really sweet. And then on top of that, I also want to highlight two more games. One is Bat Boy. And the reason I want to highlight it is because Bat Boy is the closest I've felt to a game like Shovel Knight in a long time.
Ooh.
It's an action platformer where you are basically playing as a baseball player with powers, with like supernatural powers essentially.
Question
Um,
mark?
and you are trying to save all of your friends who have been taken over by uh, this basically villainous being who has taken over their bodies and turned your friends into bosses. So once you've defeated the bosses, you get one of your friends back. And it's a really cool game because it's like how Shovel Knight was all based around the shovel. Bat Boy is based around a bat. So as enemies are hurling projectiles at you, you can hit them back at them with the bat. You can hit them at an angle to get different enemies at a different angle of the level. And the pixel art just reminds me so much of like the very best of the NES generation, but also Shovel Knight. I think the pixel art is super, super well done. And the platforming is really great as well. It definitely has its difficulty, much like Shovel Knight does. And it's a game that I think has kind of flown beneath some people's radar. They did recently do a Kickstarter. It was successful, but it was successful like at the last minute. And I think that game should have absolutely destroyed its Kickstarter. So if you have not heard of Bat Boy before, definitely go ahead and give it a wish list on Steam. I believe it is coming to PC and consoles, definitely PC in 2023, but I wouldn't be surprised if it also comes to console in 2023 as well. And then I think the last one I want to mention is a game called Sea of Stars, which I definitely need to bring up an RPG on this podcast, right? Because we have a lot of RPG fans on here. And
Mhm.
this looks like the one that I think is going to be in most people's minds towards the end of the year. It is developed by the same developer that did The Messenger. So if you love beautiful pixel art and you really like The Messenger, I think you can definitely have some faith that Sea of Stars is going to be good. It definitely has that 16-bit era classic RPG inspiration through and through, but with a lot of modern touches that don't take away from the gameplay loop that RPG fans know and love, but allow those that might not like it or newcomers to the genre to really not feel overwhelmed and not feel like there's an overabundance of grinding. Because that's the thing, like, I'm not actually that big of a fan of like hundreds of hours of RPG.
Same.
Like when you mentioned a game like Jack Move, I was like, "Oh, I need to pick this up." Are you telling me an RPG I can actually finish in a reasonable amount of time? Sign me up. Like
Yeah.
I'm just not that kind of guy. Like I'm not somebody who wants to play an RPG for several hundreds of hours because um I get I get bored and distracted easily. I have a million games to play. My backlog is ever growing to a dangerous degree. And I just like I like variety, you know? I'm not a I'm not a one food on the plate kind of person. I want lots of smaller bites. So Sea of Stars, I think, is going to be a little bit longer than Jack Move for sure. But at the same time, in the gameplay, they're starting to market it as a grind-free RPG. Now, some people might roll their eyes to that. Some people might be concerned. But I think what they mean is that they're taking away some of the barriers of feeling like you have to endlessly grind in order to get to a specific section of the game. If they can do that in a way that feels seamless and still provides a way to fully explore the world and grind if you want to, then I think they're going to have the RPG to beat this year. The pixel art is amazing. The story elements that they've shown off in trailers look cool. The characters look interesting. And this is a developer that has credibility from doing The Messenger previously. And I think a lot of people are excited about it. It's one of the most wishlisted games on Steam, I believe. Like not top 10, but definitely top 50, I think. And I had to mention an RPG. So Sea of Stars, there you go. Looking forward to it.
Every single one of those sounds right up my alley. Um, I know the Plucky Squire, the clips that I've seen over Twitter of that game, one of the most beautiful looking games I've ever seen. Like so many different art styles melded into one game, jumping between the 2D and 3D. It just looks so awesome. And also Bat Boy, I didn't even know about that one. That sounds awesome as well. So, but two of the ones that I'm definitely looking forward to more in the indie-ish department. Atomic Hearts. Now this releases this month, super soon actually, on the Xbox Games Pass and other platforms. This looks like a very cool kind of like first person BioShock-ish kind of shooter where there's just a lot of wacky stuff going on, cool powers, not realistic whatsoever. An alternative, I think it's a alternative Russia that you're in, but I'm not sure. But it just looks super, super fun. And I've never played BioShock myself, but I have played a lot of Wolfenstein. And Wolfenstein kind of reminds me of this in a way where it just has really crazy, kind of futuristic but past looking weaponry. And I don't know. It just looks so fun. So I'm definitely going to be trying that out. And Endless Dungeon. Now, Dungeon of the Endless released on mobile, and it was a fantastic port. It's like a tower defense game mixed with a real-time strategy game where you kind of manage your party around. So you'll click them and then click them an action to do, and then they'll do it. And you have to survive, and you're building turrets and stuff for waves and grabbing a key and getting to the exit. But this is a sequel. However, it's a twin stick cooperative shooter. You can play it alone as well. But it's a twin stick cooperative shooter with the tower defense elements of the first game. So it sounds like they're really trying to take it in a different direction and give it a whole new flavor of its own, while also having the tower defense element, which I'm all here for. I know, Jacob, as the twin stick shooter lover you are, I bet we're probably going to be playing this together for sure. But those were the two kind of indie-ish games that I'm looking forward to. And then I have Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I was a huge fan of Fallen Order, one of the best Star Wars games ever made, in my opinion, and surprisingly recently, which is great. And this looks to continue that storyline. I love this character and the world that they have built. I want them to just make a movie of this game, and I would watch it, even though I know every aspect of the storyline. And so I'm looking forward to this one. And then last but certainly not least, my addiction, Apex Legends Season 16, comes out actually, I think maybe on Valentine's Day, but I'm not sure. Looking forward to that. It sounds like it's going to be one of the biggest revamps of Apex Legends ever. They're redoing the class system, and here the class systems are going, or the classes of the characters or legends are going to have completely new passives because of revamping the classes. And who knows what else they have in store. I know it sounds like they're going to have a new weapon. A lot of characters are getting reworks, and I think it'll breathe some life into the game that is much needed after Season 15, where very few changes honestly happened aside from a new map and a new legend. So I think it'll be make or break for the next year of Apex Legends. If this is successful, then things are looking bright. If it isn't, man, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to that too. Do you have
Uh,
any more that you're looking forward to, or?
yeah. Well, first, let me comment on Apex. I
Yeah.
agree with everything that you're saying, especially when they canceled the single player, canceled the mobile port, and had lower than projected financials recently. I do think a revamp is probably in order at this point. And also, if you're looking at Apex Legends from a casual standpoint and you just think it might be a bit too overwhelming, first off, I don't blame you. But second off, maybe contact Mint City because you might just need a teammate that's a really good teammate that can be very patient with you. Because the thing is, Apex randos can be a mixed bag, to put it nicely. And sometimes you just need somebody kind of shepherding you along a little bit. And so that's what I've been doing recently is I have not been playing Apex for a very long time and trying to jump back in and being able to play with somebody who's played it a lot like Mint has helped me kind of reacquaint myself with everything that there is to offer in Apex Legends. I wonder what the future of arenas will be because that was pretty fun when we checked that out. And also on the battle royale front, I'm looking forward to seeing what the future of Realm Royale is. I know that not many people play that game. It has a low player base, but they just released a roadmap and it looks really promising. So, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more casual than Apex Legends, and if you want something in third person versus first person, I highly recommend you check out Realm Royale. It's a great time to jump in. There is a bit of a high skill ceiling, but there also is a relatively low floor, whereas Apex is just high ceiling and the floor is the ceiling. So, Realm would be something that I can recommend you jump into. But looking forward to the future of both of those games and seeing what happens.
Yep, a lot of exciting things in the future. I think gaming is in a really good spot this year from everything we've talked about. Just a lot to look forward to, a lot to enjoy. The backlogs continue to pile up and it will never end at this rate. Um but yeah, is there anything at the end of the podcast? We're kind of winding to the 1 hour mark. Is there anything that you want to plug or anything that you want to say about YouTube in general or your content before we conclude?
Sure, I'll keep it as brief as possible. If you made it this far and you haven't liked the video, I mean, what are you doing at this point? And clearly, you need to subscribe to Min City because, he's just continuing to grow and grow on this platform and deserves all the subs in the world. But if you enjoy what I have said on this podcast, head on over to youtube.com/YourFriendJacob. Hit the subscribe button. If you subscribe, you'll thrive. And check out one of my videos. I cover indie games, and indie games are pretty cool. So I would love to see you over there in the comment section having a little conversation about wonderful indie games. I'm currently on a break from YouTube right now. It's a short one, so it's not anything like big announcement, controversy, or anything like that. It's just I'm taking a little bit of time off because I'm tired and I'm revamping my content just a little bit. So I'll probably have a new video in a couple of weeks from now, but I have been recommended from a lot of viewers and fellow content creators like Min City to feature a little bit more of me in the videos because people have really enjoyed my podcast Indie Friends, which Mint City is on all the time, and you should check out as well. And that went so well that I was like, yeah, let's be on camera more. So I'm going to be kind of shifting focus to doing a lot more quick review style content because people have been loving the reviews and kind of mixing some of the hype laden list video content I've been doing and the review content and making a new series to the channel and working on some longer term projects as well. So there might be some less videos, but there'll be better videos in the future. And I'll probably embrace YouTube Shorts because YouTube keeps telling everybody to do that. So you might see an occasional YouTube short. They're not going to be super frequent, but I'll try to get as close to Min City's YouTube Shorts quality as I can. Um,
It
and
won't take you long, I promise.
but you know, if you love indie games, check me out. But only after you subscribe to Min City.
All right. And that's a lot of exciting stuff. Please support your friend Jacob's channel. He has done a fantastic job with it. And I think the direction he is taking is a lot more personality, has a lot more personality, and Jacob's personality is obviously very likable. So I'm very excited to see the future of your content, and his reviews just get better and better. If you have any indie game that you are debating on purchasing, double check and make sure your friend Jacob has not reviewed it yet before you buy it. Those are that good. And I'm excited to see your shorts content. YouTube Shorts just got monetized. So expect me dipping my toes further into YouTube Shorts just to experiment and see if there is growth there. By far, I get at least 3 times more subs off of my Shorts content than my long form content, which is kind of weird. But the long form content is always the more rewarding for me. So fear not, I will have the same amount of long form content, just with a little bit more of the shorts content thrown in between. But expect more collabs from me and Jacob, of course. And when we're not creating content, we're probably playing games together anyway, so it'll just naturally happen. And again, thank you for being on this episode, Jacob. I appreciate you. The episodes with you on here are so much more fun, and I'm sure way more entertaining. And thank you to the viewers and the people who enjoy this podcast for nagging me to get it's a good kind of nagging me to get Jacob on here again and get a new podcast episode uploaded. It's been a blast. Yeah. Thanks again, Jacob.
Hey, thank you. Anytime you want me on, I'll be on.
All right, guys. Again, if you made it to this point, might as well like, sub, and comment. I'd really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.